Ladies and gentlemen, in this video, we're going to take data that we got from lab and we are going to learn how to analyze it and turn it into a graph that you can add into your lab report. So during the lab, we collected all sorts of different data, and now it's up to us to take those raw data points, those observations, and to make interpretations about what they mean. One of the easiest ways to do this is to turn it into a graph and then look for a pattern, a relationship, or a trend. So, what you're going to need to do, step one, is to organize your data set. Now, I've sort of helped you out a little bit with this because I provided a class-wide Google Sheet for you to go ahead and put your data on. So, for most of my classes, we only worked with two variables. Those variables were temperature and then light intensity. Temperature is really easy. So the way that you're going to want to organize your data set for temperature is you are going to want to rearrange your data points to go basically from coldest to hottest. Easiest way to do this would be to just highlight an entire row, hold down Control and then X to cut, and then press Control and V to paste. Okay, so that'd be the easiest way to rearrange those to go from coldest to hottest, because it should be a bit of a range. Now, when we're talking about light intensity, it gets a little bit trickier. We have 3 different treatments, but we might have more than one trial for each treatment. So there's a slightly different way that you might want to organize your data because it'll make it a little bit easier for you to work with. And that would be set up one column that has all the treatments, so the wattage of the light bulb, 40, 60, 100. And then your columns after that, set up trial 1 and trial 2, and then add your rate of photosynthesis. The one thing I want you to be really careful of is when you go to get your rate of photosynthesis, you can click Control and C for copy, but if you click Control and V for paste, it's going to give you some weird number that doesn't match. The reason is because if you look very closely, there's a formula in here, and so it's trying to copy and paste the formula and not the number. So there's a really, really easy way to fix that, and that is when you press Control and C, when you go to paste, click with both fingers, paste special, and paste the values only, okay? So basically, if you have wattage, or for those of you who also did color in my other classes, you're gonna wanna organize your treatments and then 2 columns for trials. And you're gonna wanna, again, paste special because otherwise it's going to give you a weird number. Okay, so step 1 is organizing your data. Step 2 is looking for these things called outliers. Very simply stated, outliers are pieces of data that are just so far away from all of your other pieces of data that you usually cut them out, and you might discuss why you chose to cut them out, but you don't use them because they skew your trend and they skew your average and they make it really hard to see if there are any patterns. So if I'm going through and I'm kind of looking for things that don't fit the trend, I'm going to start by looking at temperature here to give you guys an example. I'm going to look through all these numbers, and the one that really stands out to me is this last guy right here. Now, a lot of you are going, oh, he's negative. Of course that's wrong. It's not necessarily wrong because it's negative. If there were a couple of others that were negative, I'd feel a little bit better about it. The real reason it stands out is because of this lovely 3 right here. There is not a single other piece of data in this set that starts with a 3 or even a 2, and then even the one that just starts with 1 is still a really, really low number. So if it's an outlier and I don't want to use it, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to get rid of it. And I'm not going to worry about it anymore. In my lab report, I would discuss that I did not use that piece of data and maybe talk about why I think it wasn't matching the average. Maybe I set up the trial wrong. You can talk about error with outliers, but basically for this graph, I'm not going to use it. I'm going to do kind of the same thing over here. It's probable that these are just fine because they match. These are a little bit farther away, but they're not so far away. These 2, possibly I would consider one of these 2 to be an outlier. Hard to tell which one though. If we had a 3rd trial, it might be easier to tell which one of these is kind of less accurate. So for now, I guess I'm just going to keep all of those, okay? So once I've figured out and removed what my outliers are, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a graph. Now, what you want to do to make a graph is you want to go and you want to highlight your rate of photosynthesis, because that's that thing we're looking for, the change in CO2 over time. I'll calculate it out for us. We're going to go up to Insert. We're going to go to Chart. and it tries to pick one for us. Now this column chart is garbage, and here is why. It's trying to show us a trend that may or may not exist because we have a couple data points over here. They're at the same temperature, and it's just yuck. I don't want to use it. It's icky, so we're going to change it up. And you're going to click on basically chart type. You're going to scroll down, and I want you guys to pick a scatter plot. And when you first click it, you're going to notice it just turns everything into dots. Not very helpful. But this is going to pop up. So your series, those are your actual data. But then your x-axis, you're going to click on this. You're going to highlight temperature. And then lo and behold, it recognizes that it wants these points to correspond with temperature. So this is our raw graph. All the data points are in pretty much where they should be. So I'm going to minimize that, and I'm going to put that to the side for now. So that's our raw graph. We'll come back to that in a minute. Now this next one, I'm going to show you why we organized it like this and why we didn't just take it like this. If I try to insert a chart right from here, it's going to try to do a bar chart. I tell it, no, I want a scatter plot. And then I tell it, oh, x-axis, I want these things. What it does is instead of recognizing that these are both at 40 watts, it treats the 40 watts and the 60 watts and the 100 watts like they're each their own treatment, and they're not. So we organize it like this so that I can highlight the whole thing. I press insert, chart, and again I go down to scatter, and suddenly it has aligned everything. So it's got both of my points here, here, and here, and again, nice raw graph. So I'll minimize that. Okay, I've got my raw graphs. They're looking pretty good. All my data points are on there. So the next thing I want to do is I want to finish off my graph. I want to make it really clear to anyone who glances at this graph what they're going to see and what the graph is all about. So first thing you want to worry about is your title. All graphs should always have a title. You don't have to think too hard on this though, because all it's going to be is the effect of the thing you changed on the thing you observed. So the thing we changed here was temperature on, and the thing we were looking for, the thing we observed, was rate of photosynthesis, that change in CO2 over time. Okay, so we've got a beautiful title. Next thing I want to worry about are what titles I'm going to have on my two axes. So I'm going to click on horizontal, that's my bottom, and this range right here is representing temperature. And I also have to worry about what units they're in, so they're in Celsius, which I always spell wrong. Thank goodness for spell check. Celsius. Okay. And then finally our vertical axis title. These numbers are representing the rate of photosynthesis. I'm going to put this to the side for now. I'm going to make this look a little bit bigger. Okay. And this is a much better looking graph. I can go through, I can identify any trends if I really wanted to. I can click again, go to customize. Series, I can try to apply something called a trend line to it, and I can change it around and just kind of see if there's any sort of pattern or trend or relationship that I'm seeing as temperature increases or as temperature decreases, what's happening to this rate. Okay, so my first graph looks good. This can go right into my lab report. Now my second graph, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to click. It needs a title. So make sure you're on chart title, and that chart title is going to be the effect of the thing we change on the thing we observe. Okay, perfectly good chart title. And now, fortunately for me, it already recognized that my horizontal title, I wanted it to be wattage. So my vertical title, this is just over here, and this is showing me the rate of photosynthesis. Okay, beautiful. So there we go. Now we have our two lovely graphs. And the next thing we can do is we can start looking for clear patterns, and then we can talk about why those clear patterns may have happened in the arguments section of our lab report. All right, if you have any questions, as always, raise your hand and call me over. Hopefully this video